I think we have a very specific stereotype in our heads when we hear the words religious sermon,
Hmm.
especially a traditional bayan. We picture something quiet, maybe a bit repetitive,
Yeah.
a lot of moral instruction, focus on the afterlife, be good to your neighbors, that sort of thing. It's usually very internal.
Right. The assumption is that it's going to be about the soul or ritual prayer. It's rarely about physics or geopolitical strategy.
Exactly. But the source we're looking at today completely shatters that stereotype. We're looking at a transcript of a lecture by Muhammad Ajmal Raza Qadri. The topic is the Miraj un-Nabi, the night journey of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay.
But what hooked me immediately wasn't the retelling of the story, it's the aggression. He isn't just telling a story, he's picking a fight.
He certainly is. He's taking on rationalists, he's taking on materialist science, and then in a really surprising twist, he turns around and takes on his own audience for being lazy.
It's a wild ride. He goes from 7th century theology to basically yelling at Gen Z to stop scrolling on TikTok and go invent a spaceship.
Yeah.
So I want to trace that arc today. We need to look at how he defines a miracle in a way that, actually challenges our understanding of nature, the logic he uses to prove the physical reality of the journey, and then that massive pivot at the end where he connects the Ascension to modern technology.
And to really get why he's so fired up, we have to understand who he's arguing against. Because he keeps using this one specific term throughout the whole lecture. He talks about the Nachari.
Nachari. Okay, that sounds like naturalist.
That's exactly what it is. It's an Urdu adaptation of the English word nature. When he says Nachari, he is referencing a specific intellectual movement that started back in the 19th century in British India, primarily associated with Sir Syed Ahmad Khan.
Okay, so give us the context there. What was the Nachari argument?
Well, you have to think about the pressure Muslims were under at that time. Western science was just dominating everything.
The British were in power.
Right. And there was this feeling among some intellectuals that for Islam to survive, it had to be compatible with modern reason. It had to. It had to make sense to a scientist.
So they tried to sort of smooth over the supernatural stuff.
Exactly. When it came to the night journey, where the text says the prophet traveled from Mecca to Jerusalem and then ascended through the heavens in like a split second, the naturalists or Necarists, they hit a wall.
Well, yeah, physics doesn't allow for that. The human body can't survive the speed, the lack of oxygen, the radiation of space.
So the rational explanation is...
It was a dream.
Yes. They argued it was a spiritual vision. The prophet didn't actually leave his bed. His spirit went, but his body stayed. That solves the physics problem, makes the religion safe for the modern mind.
And our speaker, Qadri, he absolutely hates that idea.
Oh, he views it as a capitulation, a betrayal. He calls it a new path that twists the truth just to please others. And this is where he drops his first major philosophical bomb. He completely redefines what a law of nature actually is.
Right. He uses the term karki-adat.
Karki-adat.
The translation for that is tearing the habit, isn't it?
Correct. And that distinction between a law and a habit, that is everything to his argument. We tend to think of gravity or, thermodynamics as laws, immutable rules that run the universe.
Right.
Qadri argues, no. These are just habits.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. A habit is just the routine way God usually does things. It's the default setting.
Precisely. He argues that we have confused the routine with the rule. We see fire burn things a billion times, so we say fire burns. That's the habit. But a miracle, by definition, is when the creator decides to break the habit. He literally tears the routine.
So his point is, if you try to explain a miracle using science, you're missing the entire point.
The whole point.
The definition of a miracle is that it defies science.
Yes. If a miracle followed the laws of physics, it wouldn't be a miracle. It would just be a rare scientific event. He uses some biological examples to ground this. He points to the birth of Jesus Isa in the Islamic tradition.
Right. The habit of nature is that you need a mother and a father to produce a child. That's just how biology works.
But Isa is born without a father. That is karki-adat. It tears the routine. If the Nachari tries to explain that with genetics, they fail. The event exists specifically to show that the system can be overridden.
He also mentions the example of speaking. Babies gurgle. They don't give speeches. But the tradition says Jesus spoke from the cradle to defend his mother.
Again, tearing the habit of developmental biology. He creates this dichotomy where he basically says, stop trying to judge the exception by the rules of the routine. He extends this to medicine, too. He talks about healing.
I like this example because it's so tangible. The routine is you break your leg, you go to a doctor, you get a cast, you wait 6 weeks for the bone to knit.
That's the natural path, the causal path. But he contrasts that with the account of Abdullah ibn Atiq, a companion of the Prophet who broke his leg. The speaker describes the Prophet simply touching the leg and it healing instantly.
No recovery time, no rehab.
Nothing. So effectively what Qadri is proposing is that the universe runs on two different operating systems.
That is the best way to visualize it. System 1 is the causal system. This is the world of cause and effect. Fire burns, water drowns, knives cut, gravity pulls you down. This is where we live 99.9% of the time.
And system 2 is the
admin override.
The spiritual system, exactly. In this system, the creator bypasses the code. He gives the example of Ibrahim being thrown into a massive fire by King Nimrod. System 1 says, combustion destroys organic matter. He should be ash.
But System 2 activates, the fire becomes cool, it refuses to burn him.
And look at the Red Sea example with Moses. This one is even more complex because both systems are active in the same geographic space at the same time.
Right, so Moses steps into the water. For him, System 2 is running. The water parts, it defies its nature of being a liquid. It becomes a solid wall.
But then Pharaoh follows him into the exact same channel. For Pharaoh, System 1 reactivates. The water remembers its water, gravity remembers its gravity, and he drowns.
It's so cinematic. The same element behaving differently based on who is interacting with it. What I found really surprising is that he doesn't just leave this as a story about prophets. He connects this System 2 idea to your actual life.
The unearned success part.
Yeah, unearned success.
This was a moment where the sermon became really personal. He asks the audience to reflect. Have you ever received a success, a job, or wealth that you honestly know you didn't work hard enough for?
You weren't the most qualified candidate. You didn't put in the hours, but you got it anyway.
I think we've all had that moment. It's usually where imposter syndrome kicks in. We think, oh, I slipped through the cracks, I just got lucky.
Right.
Qadri reframes that entirely. He says that isn't luck. That's not an accident. That is a glimpse of the spiritual system in your own life. The meritocratic world System 1 gives you exactly what you earn. No more, no less. But the spiritual reality operates on grace. It gives you what you don't deserve.
That is a very comforting way to frame the inexplicable good things in life. It takes the pressure off. You don't have to justify it. You just accept it as a system override.
But, and this is so crucial for where he goes later, he is very careful not to let people rely on that. You can't plan for the miracle. You can't build a strategy around System 2, but he wants the audience to acknowledge it exists.
So he's established that miracles, or tearing the habit, are possible, but he still has to deal with that specific accusation about the night journey. The skeptics said, fine, maybe miracles happen, but this specific event was a dream.
And here he deploys this logic puzzle that I thought was brilliant. It's what he calls the president analogy.
This made me laugh because it's so simple. He says, imagine I stood up right now and said, I had a dream last night that I was the president.
What's the reaction?
Zero reaction. People say, cool, I dreamt I was flying. Dreams are private, they're safe.
Exactly. Nobody objects to a dream because a dream doesn't challenge reality. But if he stands up and says, I am the president, I went to the Capitol yesterday, I signed a bill, and I came back, what happens then?
Chaos. People demand proof. The authorities get involved. You get called a liar or a lunatic.
Because the nature of the claim has shifted from subjective to objective. He's claiming a physical reality that contradicts the known order.
I see.
Qadri applies this to the prophet's time. When Muhammad told the people of Mecca he went to Jerusalem in the heavens in one night, did they say, oh, what a lovely spiritual vision?
No, they were absolutely furious. Abu Jahl, his main enemy, mocked him. They organized a whole campaign to discredit him. They called him a madman.
The speaker's argument is, the fury proves the claim. The fact that the pagans of Mecca were so outraged confirms that they understood he was claiming a physical, bodily journey.
So if he had just said, my soul traveled, they wouldn't have cared. The controversy itself validates that it was a physical event.
That's it. That's a really strong historical deduction. The conflict implies a clash with physical reality. If there's no clash, there's no anger.
And he emphasizes the scale of that clash. He talks about the distance. Mecca to Jerusalem is a month's journey by camel.
And then ascending through the heavens, he mentions that between each heaven is a distance of 500 years of travel.
500 years.
He's just stacking the impossibilities. He wants the listener to feel the sheer weight of that distance, to emphasize the power of the one who made the journey possible.
And this leads him to a question that I think is central to the whole sermon. Why him? Why this specific prophet? Why bend the entire universe for Muhammad?
He delves into the psychology of leadership here. He posits that there are three reasons human beings follow a leader: generosity, Jude; beauty, Jamal; or perfection, Kamal.
And he focuses heavily on that distinction between beauty and perfection. He brings up the story of the prophet Yusuf Joseph.
Right. In the Quranic narrative, Yusuf is described as having half of all the beauty in existence. He was just stunning.
The famous scene is the women of Egypt. They're peeling fruit with knives. Yusuf walks into the room, and they are so distracted by his face that they cut their hands without realizing it.
The speaker acknowledges that. That is the impact of Jamal beauty. It distracts you, it mesmerizes you, but then he contrasts it with the Prophet Muhammad.
Oh, this is such a visceral comparison.
He says, for Yusuf, women cut their hands in distraction, but for Muhammad, grown men warriors, the companions were willing to have their heads cut off in devotion.
Women cut their hands, men cut their heads.
He argues this implies a higher tier of influence, not just distraction, but total, conscious devotion. That is Kamal perfection. He's building the case that the universe's rules were bent for this individual because he represented the pinnacle of creation.
If the habits of nature are going to be torn for anyone, they're going to be torn for him.
Exactly. And just when you think you have this sermon figured out, okay, it's a defense of miracles, it's a devotional speech about the prophet, he just flips the table.
This is the moment, if you're listening and you zoned out, this is where you wake up. He looks at the word mirage.
It means ascension, right, or ladder.
Yes, and he interprets this not just as a vertical trip to heaven that happened once, but as a metaphor for growth and progress.
Yeah.
And the tone changes instantly. He stops praising the past and starts attacking the present.
He really goes in on the audience.
Yeah.
He specifically targets the youth. He calls them lazy.
He points out the irony. He says, you are a community that celebrates a prophet who ascended to the heavens, who conquered time and space. But you are stagnant.
He calls out people lying in bed, scrolling on their mobile phones. And this part stung. He says, this phone is an invention. Someone else invented it. You didn't make this. You were just using it to waste time.
It's a brutal critique of consumerism versus innovation, he's asking. Why are the followers of the Ascension at the bottom of the global hierarchy?
And he redefines the concept of sunnah. Usually when people say following the sunnah, they mean the rituals: wear the robe, use the miswak toothbrush, eat with your right hand.
Ritual emulation, yeah.
Qadri doesn't deny that, but he says the defining character of the prophet's life was 23 years of constant struggle, upward movement, conquest, expansion. He argues that ascension is a mindset. If you aren't rising in your career, in your knowledge, in your technology, you aren't actually following the prophet.
He has this great line, Islam has elasticity. It rises the more you suppress it. He's basically framing resilience and ambition as theological duties.
He connects the miracle directly to the mandate. He says, God gave your leader the power to bend time and space. Therefore, the community of that leader should be the ones mastering time and space through science.
I love that connection. My prophet went to space, so I should be an astrophysicist.
Or an engineer or a doctor. He suggests that scientific ambition is a form of spiritual worship. He tells the youth to take courses, learn skills, master modern technology.
And remember that System 2 conversation we had about unearned success.
Yes. He circles back to that. He says, you cannot sit around waiting for the miracle. The spiritual system only kicks in after you've exhausted the physical system.
You have to do the work of the Nachari, the hard scientific work, before you can expect the help of the divine.
You have to tie your camel first.
Exactly. And he uses one final analogy that really lands the point. The imam.
Right. In the story of the night journey, when the prophet reaches Jerusalem, all the previous prophets, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, are there waiting for him. And Muhammad leads them in prayer. He is the imam.
So Qadri argues that this community, the Muslim community, is meant to be the imam of all nations, the global leader.
But then he drops the reality check.
Right. He says, you cannot be the imam if you are behind everyone else. You cannot lead from the back of the line.
If you want to be the imam of nations, you have to be superior to them, not just in piety, but in capability, in knowledge, in power.
He's saying that their current stagnation isn't just an economic failure or a political failure. It's a religious failure. They are failing their mandate to lead.
It really changes how you view the sermon. It transforms the night journey from a fairy tale into a manifesto. It's not just believe in this miracle. It's let this miracle embarrass you into working harder.
That is a powerful takeaway. So, stripping away the specific theology for a second, what's the core message here for anyone listening?
I think it's the refusal to accept the routine as the limit. The rationalist mindset says this is how things are and they can't change. Gravity is gravity. The Meraj mindset says the laws of reality can be bent if the effort and the connection are strong enough.
It's about breaking the habit of mediocrity.
Precisely. Whether you call it a miracle or just disruption, progress only happens when someone refuses to accept the default settings of the world.
The speaker, Muhammad Ajmal Raza Qadri, really turns a traditional story into a call for the future. He challenges you to ask, am I just consuming the progress of others, or am I contributing to the ascension of humanity?
And that is a question that sticks with you.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked